Hello and welcome to my Specialization Introduction and Outdoor Content Guide for the Vengeance Demon Hunter in World of Warcraft Battle for Azeroth. If you haven't watched the primer video for this series, I recommend that you do that now. There'll be a link in the description below, and that video will get you up to speed on everything that is going on in this one. Alright, so we're here on our Vengeance Demon Hunter. We've got our action bars visible and empty. If we go into our talent tree, these are the talents you can select in order to fulfill the requirements laid out in the primer video. And now that we've done that, we're going to get into our spell book. But first, I want to say this is an outdoor content guide. Vengeance is a tanking specialization, but this is not a guide on how to tank in dungeons or raids. This is a guide for being out in the open world, doing your questing, leveling, farming, and as such will be kind of ignoring or underemphasizing abilities that would be good in that tanking situation in order to emphasize the stuff that's going to work really well for us in outdoor content. So keep that in mind as we go forward. Now, as we get into our spell book, I'm not going to go into in-depth to every single spell, but I will give at least a brief description of what the spell does so that you can understand how it functions and why it's getting put into the category that it is. So first off, we have Consume Magic. This is a combat utility ability that will remove a magical effect, a beneficial magical effect from an enemy, and it will grant you some of your primary resource. Now, we're not going to use this very often. You may start to incorporate it later on in a particular farm locations, but for the most part, it's not something we're going to be really focused on out in the open world. Next, we have Demon Spikes. This is going to be a combat utility ability that we're probably not going to use too often either. It is central to tanking on a Demon Hunter, but not really necessary in the open world. It will increase our armor and our parry chance. Has 2 charges. Next we have Disrupt. This is our interrupt ability. It will interrupt spell casting. So that goes in our crowd control section. We have Fiery Brand. This is an offensive cooldown ability. It has a 1-minute cooldown. It will instantly deal a good amount of damage to the target and then reduce damage they deal to you. We have Glide. We're not going to add that to our bar. We can activate that by hitting the jump key when we are falling, but that allows us to reduce our falling speed. We have Immolation Aura. That's part of our core rotation. Imprison is a crowd control ability that will incapacitate a demon beast or humanoid for 1 minute. Infernal Strike is a combat utility ability that allows us to leap through the air up to 30 yards away, deal a little bit of damage on impact, and it has 2 charges. Next we have our sigils. So we have Sigil of Flame. This is going to be a part of our core rotation. Sigil of Misery is a crowd control ability that will fear enemies within its area. Sigil of Silence is also a crowd control ability that will silence enemies within its area. Next we have Soul Cleave, that's part of our core rotation. Spectral Sight, we're going to put with our miscellaneous spells. This will allow us to see enemies and treasures through physical barriers, and we'll also be able to see stealth and invisible enemies for 10 seconds. If we take any damage, then it will disrupt the sight and that'll be over. So usually we'll use this outside of combat when we're looking for a particular thing, trying to figure out where it is. Next we have Throw Glaive. This is a combat utility ability that will throw our weapon and allow us to get enemies to come to us. Torment is the Demon Hunter Taunt. That's a combat utility ability we probably won't use too often out in the open world. It does have some limited use. You can get enemies to come over towards you, or if you're, say, working on a world quest and you do want to taunt the enemies so that you can tank them, you could use it in that scenario as well. And that's it. That's all the active abilities for the Demon Hunter, except for Metamorphosis, which got stuck way here on the end for some reason. So we'll go ahead and pull that down. That is a defensive cooldown we can use. It turns us into a demon, increasing our current maximum health and armor, and it generates our main resource. So that sneaky one makes it the last of the active abilities for the Demon Hunter. the Vengeance Demon Hunter. So let's talk about the resources available to the Vengeance Demon Hunter. You have one resource. It's called Pain. You start combat with 0, and you can generate up to 100. You'll then spend that Pain on some of your offensive and defensive abilities. So let's talk about the passives available. We have Chaos Brand. Our fire damage brands the target, increasing magic damage taken by 5%. Our tattoos will reduce all damage taken by 10% and increase our stamina and our armor. We've got our double jump. Our mastery is Fell Blood. This will increase the armor bonus of demon spikes by 1% of our agility. Remember, that's an ability we're not really using too much. And then it will also increase our attack power. And then finally we have Shattered Souls. Killing a target will sometimes shatter their soul, leaving a soul fragment behind for 20 seconds. When you approach the soul fragment, it will heal you for a very large amount. If you consume a lesser soul fragment, you'll get healed for 8% of all damage taken in the last 5 seconds to a minimum of 1% of maximum health. And if you happen to consume a demon soul, you'll also get 20% increased damage for 15 seconds. So basically, you'll see these souls when you kill a target, which we won't be able to show here because the target dummy doesn't die. But you'll get healing, and if it happens to be a demon, you'll also get a damage buff as well. So let's talk about the core rotation for the Demon Hunter. I feel like I am missing a ability here. Let me double check. Okay, that's the ability. Alright, so these are the talents you can use to fulfill the requirement in the primer video, and this will give us our other missing ability, which is Shear, which is part of our core rotation. There we go. Alright, so our core rotation. We start out by wanting to build up Pain. Pain is our main resource, and we're going to build that by casting Shear. Shear will deal an okay amount of physical damage. It will shatter a lesser soul fragment from the target and generate 10 Pain. We can also cast our Immolation Aura. We want to throw that out as often as we can. That gives us some nice AoE damage and will generate 20 Pain over 6 seconds. Also, we have our Sigil of Flame. We can place this at a target location, and it will deal fire damage and more fire damage over 6 seconds. So another nice little AoE ability we have. So with our Immolation Aura and our Shear, we're building up Pain, and then we will spin that Pain on Soul Cleave. Soul Cleave costs 30 Pain. It will strike all enemies in front of you for a moderate amount and heal you for quite a bit. It will also consume up to 2 soul fragments within 25 yards. So what that means is that those soul fragments that you will consume will heal you for 8% of your damage taken in the last 5 seconds. So normally you have to move into the soul shards or soul fragments in order to absorb them and get the healing. When you use Soul Cleave, it sucks in 2 of them and you get that without having to move. So pretty simple, pretty straightforward. We're going to go up to our target. We can put down our Sigil of Flame. We can cast our Immolation Aura, start using our Shear. We're building up to our Soul Cleave. You'll see these are the soul fragments. If we Soul Cleave, it sucks those in and gives us healing back. And then we go right back into using our Shear again until we can use our Soul Cleave. Now, the number that you're seeing on the Soul Cleave is the number of nearby soul fragments. So you'll see we've got 5. We'll use that. That gives us 3 left. So when we build up, we know, okay, there's 4, and we can consume them. This is so that if you want to maximize your Soul Cleaves, you can make sure you always have at least 2 before you cast Soul Cleave so you can get that healing. If our Immolation Aura or our Sigil of Flame come off cooldown, then we can throw those out again and use those. And that's it. That's the core rotation for open world content on the Vengeance Demon Hunter. Now we do have our Glaive Throw. We can use that for a little bit of extra damage. And we do have our Infernal Strike. This will let us jump to a point within 30 yards, and that also does some damage. So we'll want to use those to eke out every little bit of damage we can as well. And then finally, we do have our Fiery Brand, which will deal an instant, pretty high amount of damage to the target, but it is on a 1-minute cooldown, so we probably want to save that for like rares or elites. So the next thing to do is get into the talent tree and try to create a build that's going to work well in outdoor content. So we're going to go ahead and set that up. Okay. So this is the build that I recommend you use in open world content. It's not the only build you can use, but it's the one I like, recommend, and will be showcasing at the end of this video. We're going to go through each talent, talk about it, what it does, and why we have included it in the build. Alright, so first off we have Abyssal Strike. Infernal Strike's range is increased by 10 yards and its cooldown is reduced by 8 seconds. So now our Infernal Strike can jump us up to 40 yards away, drastically increasing our movement capability, and its cooldown is reduced to 12 seconds, meaning every 12 seconds or so we can do one of these, both so that we can travel faster and also so that we can get that little bit of extra damage out as well. Next, we have Burning Alive. Every 2 seconds, your Fiery Brand deals 76 fire damage and spreads to one nearby enemy. So this means that when we hit Fiery Brand, it's not just dealing damage to a single target. It'll deal that heavy hitting damage to one target, but then it'll add a damage over time debuff to the target, and it will spread to other targets. So this turns it into an ability that's good to use against multiple enemies as well as a single target. Next, we have Flame Crash. Infernal Strike creates a sigil of flame when you land, so this means that now every time we cast Infernal Strike, we'll be able to leap in. That's going to create a flame sigil underneath us, and now for most combats we won't even have to cast Sigil of Flame at all because we'll get the one that we need, and once it goes away, if we want to, we can re-up Sigil of Flame, but hopefully the target we're fighting against is already dead at that point. Next up we have Fracture. So this ability actually replaces our Shear, which is the ability we were using to build up our Pain, and it has a slight cooldown now, but comes with 2 charges. And this time, if we look at our regular Shear, it generates 10 pain and hits for 542. Fracture will hit for 1000, and it will generate 25 pain. So we will be able to generate pain much faster, hit a little bit harder, and this is going to be good for us when fighting our enemies. Next, we have Concentrated Sigils. All sigils are now targeted at your location, and the duration of their effects is increased by 2 seconds. We're basically taking this because when we Infernal Strike and we get that Fiery Brand, we'll get 2 seconds extra from that brand, and anytime we put down our Sigil of Flame, we'll also get 2 seconds extra of damage from that. So we're trying to eke out every little bit of damage we can with this talent build to help us kill things out in the open world. Alright, next we have Spirit Bomb. This is going to get incorporated into our core rotation. It also has no cooldown, so we're going to put that in here. This gives us an option, it gives us a way to spend pain that isn't just Soul Cleave. So Soul Cleave does do some damage to targets in front of you. It sucks in the soul fragments to heal you, but as a tank, you generally are going to have a lot of health and stuff anyway, so that's not a big deal. With Spirit Bomb, this costs 30 pain. It will consume up to 5 fragments within 25 yards, so pretty good range, and then it explodes. It will afflict nearby enemies with frailty, which any enemy with frailty will deal 10% less damage to you, so a little bit of extra toughness there. And it will damage them for 297 fire per fragment. So if you use this at the maximum, it's going to deal 1000 damage to all the targets around you. So it gives us another way to spend pain. And then finally we have Void Reaver. Enemies struck by your Soul Cleave right, which we just talked about, will deal 6% less damage to you for 12 seconds. So now, if we're using Soul Cleave, we're probably using it because we want the heal, because if we don't, then we're using Spirit Bomb. So if we need the heal, it probably would help to have the damage reduction coming from Void Reaver as well to help us, stall, heal up, get back into the fight. So how does this change our rotation? It doesn't change it very much. We're going to go in. We're still going to want to fracture. We're going to want to get our Immolation Aura going, our Sigil of Flame. We'll fracture again. We're just going to keep fracturing until we get 5 soul fragments. Then we're going to Spirit Bomb and do our big explosion. And then we'll go back into our fracture. If we do need healing, we can use our Soul Cleave to deal some damage, get some damage mitigation, and suck in 2 of those soul fragments so that we can heal up from those. And that's pretty much it. The one thing to add there is, if available, if you're between fights, then you want to go ahead and Infernal Strike in. Boom, that'll put a Sigil of Flame down, and you could put another one right on top of it if you wanted to for some nice burst AoE damage. Alright, so let's talk about the PvP talents. If you want to toggle on War Mode and then focus on PvE content. First off, I recommend you take Relentless. This will replace your Honorable Medallion. It'll turn it into a passive ability that reduces the duration of incoming crowd control effects by 20%. So nice set it and forget it talent. Then we have Solitude. This will increase your pain generation by 10% and attack speed by 10% when there are no allies within 15 yards. So if you're out there doing your own thing, questing, farming, or whatever, you'll just passively get increased pain generation and attack speed, which equals more damage. Next, we have Jagged Spikes. While Demon Spikes is active, melee attacks against you cause physical damage equal to 30% of the damage taken back to the attacker. So what this does is this will take Demon Spikes, which we're not using because it just increases your armor and parry chance, and we have pretty good sustain already, so we don't really need the extra defense. It turns it into an ability that we can use in order to reflect damage back on the attacker, which means more damage output for us, which means things die quicker. And then finally, Demonic Trample. This is an ability on a 45-second cooldown. It causes us to enter Metamorphosis, our big old demon form that we don't really use. And then we will gain 200% increased movement speed for 5 seconds. And as we move, we will knock down enemies in our path and deal damage to them. So this is just a cool little increase in movement speed ability. We get 5 seconds at 200% increased speed, which is pretty fast, and it just knocks down enemies, and that looks pretty cool. So those are the PvP talents I recommend you take. That's the build. The next step is to take this out into the open world and see how it does against different types of enemies. So I'm going to cut to that, and I will see you there. Alright, so we're here in Suramar City. We're going to fly down and try out this build against a couple different enemies. So let's go ahead. So remember, if we have it available, we're between fights. We want to use our Infernal Strike, jump on top of our target to get that fiery brand going. We can hit our Immolation Aura. We could put down another Sigil of Flame if we want, but I'm not going to. Okay, we hit this guy with our AoE. So against a single target, we cast our Fracture. If they're getting kind of low, hit your Spirit Bomb. Boom. There we go. Alright, so between fights again, we've got our Infernal Strike up. We can jump right on top of this guy, go straight into our Fracture, and he's dead. If there are a couple enemies in the same area, we can hit our Throw Glaive. That'll get us a couple people there. Let's see if we can grab this one. We can Infernal Strike in place to put down a fiery brand. We can go ahead and do a couple fractures. We've got our Spirit Bomb ready to go. And that is pretty much all there is to it against a single target or two. Now, If we're going to fight something that has a little bit more health and we're in an AoE situation, which is the situation we're about to put ourselves in, we do have a couple options. So first off, we are going to use our fiery brand and have that spread out to enemies. And then if we get into a hairy situation, we can activate Metamorphosis, which puts us into our demon form for 15 seconds. It'll increase our current health by 30%, maximum armor by 100%, and it will generate 7 pain every 1 second, which will give us a lot of chances to use Soul Cleave and Spirit Bomb. So let's go ahead and gather up some people. Gather up a few people here. This big guy, Fiorius, he has a little more health than the other one, so we'll get to see that. So we can just Infernal Strike in place. Alright. We can go ahead and put on our Immolation Aura, put down another Fiery Brand. We're going to disrupt her, so she'll come over to us. Alright, so then we start with our Fracture. And we can use our Spirit Bomb. We've got some Soul Fragments out, so we can hit our Soul Cleave to suck those in and heal ourselves. And now we just have this guy. Now I know I said we were going to use our Fiery Brand, but I was too busy explaining to remember to do it, but we'll show that off here in a bit. So there's a little bit of slowdown once you get to enemies with a lot of health, but that is also where Fiery Brand would help out as well. So usually I go over and kill this rare spawn here to show off the build, but there's really no need to do that. You've kind of seen how that works. What I want to do is go over and show you how you really should be playing most tank specializations and the Demon Hunter, the Vengeance Demon Hunter in particular. So we're going to go down and we are going to just try to gather up as many enemies as we can. Alright, we'll go ahead and zoom out a bunch so we can actually see what we're doing here. Get all these, and we're going to go to town. Here we go. We're going to cast our Fiery Brand. We're going to Metamorphosis and get that going. Alright, we're going to put our other Sigil Flame down. We're going to start hitting our Fractures, building up to the Spirit Bomb. We're going to hit Spirit Bomb, and boom. Explode and kill a whole bunch of things. We can always walk into these Soul Fragments if we need them. Or we can use our shear to suck them into us if we don't want to move. And I mean, that was pathetically easy. So that is how you want to go out and do your questing and your farming on a Vengeance Demon Hunter. You have the survivability, you've got the AoE damage, and you can really get out there and just start wrecking things in groups of 5, 10, 15. So I hope that this has helped you to understand a little bit how to play the Vengeance Demon Hunter. Hope it's given you the confidence to get on your own Vengeance Demon Hunter, get out there, start questing, leveling, farming, try out the specializations, see if it's something you'd like to play in Battle for Azeroth. If you like the video, hit the thumbs up, like, subscribe, leave a comment, whatever you want to do to encourage me to keep making this type of content. And I hope you have a great time in Battle for Azeroth, and thank you for watching.